All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome back. We are diving into a topic that I think is going to hit close to home for a lot of people listening, the lasting impact of childhood trauma, but specifically on men.
And not just the impact of the trauma, but the power that can come from healing.
Yeah, exactly. How can men rise above the challenges they've faced and use those experiences to be better leaders, fathers, husbands, better people?
I think that's a powerful perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're basing this deep dive on a YouTube video called Abused Men, Restoring Strength from Within Taking Your Power Back from the channel Hope Merchants 24.
Okay.
And what really stood out to me about the video is how much it focuses on this journey of healing and empowerment. It talks about the lasting effects of abuse, all the things that boys may experience, whether it's sexual molestation, physical abuse, emotional abuse, or neglect.
Right.
And I was thinking, have you noticed how these childhood experiences can kind of ripple outward into different areas of a person's life?
Oh, absolutely. What's fascinating is how the video explains how those experiences can really manifest later in life.
Yeah.
It could be things like difficulty in relationships or a fear of rejection or feeling inadequate. You might even find it difficult to trust other people.
Right, you're carrying it with you.
Yeah, echoes of past wounds.
Exactly. And the video talks about this story about a man named Joseph who went through a ton of trauma growing up, ended up even in prison, but then he completely turned his life around.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a real life example of hope and the potential for healing.
Oh, for sure. Joseph's story is proof that no matter how deep those wounds are, there's always a possibility for healing and positive change.
Yeah, it's not just acknowledging the impact, but understanding that you have the power to change the narrative.
That's right.
And I think that's where this concept of reparenting yourself comes in.
Reparenting.
Yeah, the video talks about this as a way to rebuild a sense of self-worth. It's like, have you ever heard of this?
Oh, yeah. I mean, think of reparenting as becoming your own cheerleader.
Oh, I like that.
Becoming your own best friend.
Yeah.
It's about learning to offer yourself the same encouragement that you would to someone you really care about.
That's a cool way to think about it.
Yeah, it means validating your emotions and your needs and figuring out how to meet those needs.
Like giving yourself the love and support that maybe you didn't get.
Exactly. So you can challenge those negative voices.
Oh, yeah, those inner critics, right?
You got it.
Yeah.
The ones that say, you're not good enough, you don't deserve success, or you're not worthy of love.
We've all got them.
Yeah, reparenting is saying, no, I'm choosing not to listen to those anymore.
Yeah.
And then replacing those negative thoughts with more positive affirmations like, I am capable, I deserve success, I am bold.
Right. I love that. I think what's really powerful, too, is that it's not just about personal well-being. It's about breaking free from the cycle of abuse for the sake of your partner, your children, your loved ones.
That's such an important point. Healing isn't just this isolated thing that we do. It has a ripple effect. It impacts our families, our communities.
It's about being the best version of yourself for them, right?
Right, exactly.
Now, the video gets real about anger issues, too, which I think makes a lot of sense.
Right.
It's like if you've been hurt in the past, it's going to be tough to regulate those emotions.
For sure.
So I'm curious, what are some of the warning signs the video mentions that might indicate somebody's struggling with anger?
Well, the obvious one is difficulty controlling your anger.
Yeah.
But there's some subtler signs too, like do you find yourself getting frustrated easily,
Yeah.
snapping at people, or feeling like that anger is escalating really quickly?
Oh, okay.
Those are clues that you might need to seek out some support or develop healthier coping mechanisms.
I feel like that's important to point out, that seeking help is not weakness.
No, not at all. It takes a lot of strength to admit you need help and to actually look for it.
Absolutely.
The video really encourages men to consider counseling, learn some positive communication skills, even explore spiritual guidance to kind of find that healing.
So it's about channeling the anger, not letting it control you.
Exactly. And it's about breaking the cycle of abuse, not just for personal well-being, but for the people around you, particularly your children.
Yeah, setting a positive example.
Exactly.
Yeah. The video includes this quote from Psalms 147.3 about God healing the brokenhearted.
Oh, wow.
I thought that was really cool because it highlights the emotional wounds, but also the possibility of mending those wounds.
Absolutely.
It seems like forgiveness was a big theme throughout this video. Forgiving yourself, forgiving the abuser, and even the role of God in that process.
That is a lot to unpack, for sure.
It is. I mean, let's start with forgiving yourself. Why is that so important in the healing process?
Well, when someone's experienced abuse, especially if it happened in childhood, they often carry around a lot of shame and guilt.
Oh, yeah.
And they might blame themselves for what happened, even though, at the time, they were completely powerless to stop it.
Like if I was different, it wouldn't have happened.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That self-blame can be incredibly damaging, and it prevents true healing and self-acceptance.
Yeah.
Forgiving yourself means recognizing you were a victim.
Right.
You didn't deserve what happened, and you're not to blame for the abuser's actions.
And that lets you let go of some of that guilt.
Exactly. Let go of that guilt, that shame, so you can move forward.
So, do you have an example of like how somebody might go about forgiving themselves? Because I know that seems like a really tough thing to do.
It is a tough thing to do. But the video talks about acknowledging the pain and the hurt that was caused by the abuse, but also recognizing that holding on to self-blame only makes things worse. It suggests things like, write a letter to your younger self, offering comfort and understanding as a way to start releasing that guilt.
I love that visual of writing a letter to your younger self. That
Yeah.
really highlights the self-compassion part.
It does.
Okay. So we've talked about forgiving yourself, but what about forgiving the abuser? That's got to be even harder, especially if they never took responsibility for what they did.
It is incredibly difficult. And, it's important to remember that forgiveness does not mean that you're saying the abuse was okay.
Right. Not letting them off the hook.
It's not about that.
Yeah.
What it's about is releasing that anger, that resentment, the bitterness you've been carrying.
Wow.
You're making the choice to free yourself from the power that the abuser still has over you.
So it's reclaiming your own power.
Exactly. The video really emphasizes that forgiveness is a personal choice,
Okay.
and there's no right or wrong way to do it. It's a process that takes time.
Yeah.
It looks different for everyone.
Yeah.
And, I think it's important to seek professional guidance if you're struggling with this part of healing.
Especially to unpack all those feelings and emotions.
Absolutely. A therapist can offer a safe and supportive space to explore those feelings and work through them.
Mm-hmm. This is kind of a cool concept, this idea that past pain can be transformed into purpose.
It does sound counterintuitive.
Yeah, like how does that work?
I think it's about finding meaning in those experiences and using your story to help other people.
Okay.
The video encourages men to look at those struggles not as something that defines them, but as something they can use to inspire others.
Like turn it into a source of strength.
Yes. And the video actually shares a couple of stories of men who have overcome abuse and now use their experience to support other men.
Wow, that's awesome.
They become mentors, advocates, sources of hope.
Turning wounds into wisdom.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they show that healing is possible, there's light at the end of the tunnel, and we can use our experiences to make a positive impact.
I love that. The video mentions a passage from 2 Corinthians 1.3 to 4,
Okay.
and it's talking about finding comfort in God during difficult times so that we can then comfort others who are struggling.
That's a beautiful idea, that even in our pain, we can be a source of strength for other people.
It is. It's like a chain reaction.
It is.
And that brings up a question. How can we, as listeners, contribute to a world where men feel empowered to heal and thrive?
Yeah.
That's a good question. Because I think it's easy to get caught up in the stories and everything, but what does this mean for us?
It's a question worth exploring further.
I think so too. I want to hear your thoughts on this, but let's take a moment to gather our thoughts and we'll come back and talk about this.
Sounds good.
Okay.
As we've been talking, I've been thinking about how eye-opening this whole deep dive has been in terms of just how much childhood trauma can impact a man's life, and especially his relationships.
Oh, totally. I think it's like the video is saying these early experiences can really shape a man's entire view of the world and how he connects with other people.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is how it delves into the actual psychology of it.
Yeah.
The psychological effects of abuse and neglect.
Right.
It explains that when a boy experiences these things, it creates a lot of insecurity, anxiety, and even a distorted view of himself and the world.
Oh, that's a good point. It's almost like those early experiences create this blueprint that he carries with him into adulthood.
That is a great way to put it. And, if those wounds aren't addressed, they can show up in how he interacts with people.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe he has difficulty forming close relationships.
Right. Always needing validation or fearing rejection.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. He's always trying to protect himself from being hurt again.
Yeah, but then it pushes people away.
It's like a catch-22,
Mm-hmm.
right? He might crave connection, but subconsciously sabotage his relationships because he doesn't believe he's worthy of it.
It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
You got it.
Yeah.
And that's where this whole idea of reparenting yourself comes in.
Yeah, becoming your own best friend, your own cheerleader.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
It's so powerful because it's recognizing those patterns and consciously choosing to rewrite that script.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
about giving yourself the love and acceptance that you may have missed out on.
Yeah. It sounds like it takes a lot of courage, though, to actually confront those deep-seated beliefs.
It does, but the video emphasizes that we have the power to break free.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that might mean seeking out support, through therapy or support groups.
Yeah, it seems like reaching out for help was a big theme in the video.
Oh, sure.
Like, you don't have to do this alone.
Absolutely. There's strength in vulnerability.
Mm,
Being able to admit you need help.
totally.
And that brings us to another important point, the impact of childhood trauma on fatherhood.
Yeah, because if you're carrying around these unresolved wounds, it's going to affect how you show up as a parent, right?
Absolutely. The video talks about how unresolved trauma can lead to these patterns of behavior being passed down.
Like a cycle of pain.
Exactly. Like, for example, a father who was physically abused as a child
Okay.
might unknowingly repeat that behavior with his own children,
Wow.
even if he consciously wants to be different. Those old wounds can sort of hijack his reactions.
It just highlights the importance of healing, not just for ourselves, but for the next generation.
Couldn't agree more. When a man heals from his childhood wounds, he breaks that cycle. And you
Yeah.
can create a more positive, nurturing environment for his kids.
It's like he gets to be the father he always wished he had.
I love that. Yeah, it's about creating a legacy of healing
Right.
where empathy, compassion, healthy communication, those become the norm.
I love that so much. That's powerful. And it brings us back to that question we posed earlier, right? How can we contribute to a world where men feel empowered to heal and thrive?
It's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is. Where do we even begin?
Yeah, it feels so big.
I know, it's such a big question, right? And it feels overwhelming.
Yeah, where do we even start?
I think this is where that message of the video comes in, the one about individual healing actually leading to societal change.
Right, yeah, that makes sense.
So, break it down for me.
Well, the video kind of presents a solution, and it starts with each man taking ownership of his healing journey. And as more and more men heal, they naturally become these positive influences in their own circles.
Yeah, it's like that ripple effect, right?
It is.
Like each individual healing can spread out to families, communities, society as a whole.
Exactly. And as the video points out, healed men often become better fathers, more supportive partners, compassionate leaders.
It breaks the cycle.
It does.
And creates a more just and caring world.
Exactly. And it goes back to that idea of turning pain into purpose.
Right.
The video really emphasized that men can use their experiences to help other men.
Yeah, become mentors or advocates.
Yeah, or even just sharing their stories to help counter that shame and isolation that often comes with abuse.
Right.
Because when you speak out and support others, that's when you really reclaim your power.
And find meaning in your pain.
Exactly. And, that message of hope and resilience is so important, especially when you think about how men are often told to just toughen up and suppress their emotions.
Yeah, be a man.
Right. This video is like, no, embrace vulnerability.
It's okay to not be okay.
Exactly. Seek support.
And asking for help is not weakness.
Absolutely not. It's a sign of strength. So now that we're thinking about this as a collective thing,
Yeah.
how can we all play a part in creating a world that's more supportive of men healing?
What's that look like? What can we do?
I think it can start with simple things, like having open and honest conversations with the men in our lives.
Okay, yeah.
Letting them know that it's okay to not be okay.
Mm.
There's no shame in seeking help.
And I think it's about challenging those societal norms, right? Like
Right.
encouraging open communication, vulnerability,
Yeah.
emotional intelligence.
And supporting organizations that are already doing this work.
Yeah.
Advocating for policies that promote mental health awareness and challenge those harmful stereotypes about masculinity.
That's a lot, but it also feels empowering
It does.
that we can actually make a difference.
Yeah. And remember, it starts with us.
With each of us.
Examining our own beliefs about masculinity.
Okay.
Being mindful of the language that we use.
Mm-hmm.
And creating a space where men feel safe.
Safe and supported.
Exactly. So they can express their full range of emotions.
Healing is not just personal.
No.
It's a collective responsibility.
It is. And, I think by working together, we can create a world where men feel empowered to heal and thrive
Absolutely.
and become the best versions of themselves.
So well said. Well, this brings us to the end of our deep dive, and I hope this conversation has challenged you, inspired you, and given you hope.
I hope so too.
Remember, healing is possible. Reach out, seek support, and keep this conversation going.